Good morning to everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Susan Kaufman-Purcell. It's a great honor to be here at this very distinguished Center for Hemispheric Policy of the University of Miami and to speak about Latin America, the changes in Latin America, and the economic and trade outlook and the perspectives for U.S. policy in the region. Since this subject is very broad and we could stay here forever talking about this very rich subject, I decided to share with you just a few remarks on Brazil, the state of the economy, how it grew recently, and some political aspects of our bilateral relation, and also historic relations, and the opportunities that the big changes that took place in Brazil offer to our relations as means of bringing our countries even closer, and especially the great opportunities for business between the two countries. As many of you know, Brazil during the last year went through a very positive period. From the year 2000 to 2011, according to the World Bank, Brazil's economy was multiplied by 4 in nominal terms. And in 2003, Brazil accounted for only 1.4% of the world economy. And in 2011, this number reached 3.5%. So it was a huge difference. In 2012, Brazil experienced a lower rate of growth after maintaining a continued expansion during the years of the financial crisis from in the 2008 and on. But in spite of this reduction in the pace of growth, there are very good signs and very positive signs, such as unemployment rate, which is very low. It's 4.6% by the end of last year. And also inflation, which is under control and within the targets of the World Bank, of the Central Bank of Brazil, and it was in December 2012, 5.8%. So the combination of low unemployment, controlled inflation, and important rates of growth created the possibilities of consumption, investments, and savings, completely changing the business environment in the country. As a result of the social policies implemented both by President Lula and President Dilma Rousseff, more than 24 million people have been raised out of poverty, and 31 million joined the middle class recently, so creating a social mobility of 55 million people. And as you know, a sizable and robust middle class is the backbone of a healthy economy. Brazil's new middle class now includes more than 100 million people, and it has become Brazil's main engine of growth, stimulating increased investments, both domestically and from abroad. It can be said that Brazil's comfortable position is the result of 3 main factors: the macroeconomic stabilization policies initiated in the 90s, which have tamed inflation, the social inclusion policies that have been expanded over the last decade, and the new investment opportunities that emerged at the heels of macroeconomic stabilization and policies of social inclusion. The growth of the economy generated a healthy environment for trade and for investments. According to data from the United States International Trade Commission, Brazil ranked as the 8th biggest trade partner of the United States last year. In terms, our total trade reached $76 billion. And as in terms of trade balance in 2012, the United States had the 6th largest trade surplus with Brazil, if you count all countries, including those who have port hubs that, if you count only final destination of trade, Brazil represents the second largest trade surplus to the United States of approximately $12 billion. With regards to investment, according to data also from the Central Bank of Brazil, Brazil continues to attract investments from the world, from outside, but especially continues to have in the United States the largest source of foreign investment. The stock of American investment in 2012 was of around $25 billion. And last year alone, the flow of American foreign investment was of $12 billion from the United States. And Brazil received last year a total of $60 billion of direct investment. It was, according to UNCTAD, the third main destination for foreign investment after the United States and China. But there is another very interesting aspect also to be mentioned about trade and investment, especially with relation to investment, which is the movement and the growing movement of Brazilian capitals to the United States. In the year 2000, for every dollar Brazilian companies invested in the United States, American companies invested $47 in Brazil. In 2012, for every dollar coming from Brazil to the United States, there were $6.7 invested by American companies in Brazil. In only 12 years, the gap between the flow of American investment to Brazil and Brazilian investment to the United States was reduced by more or less 1/7 of its former value. This meaning that the Brazilian investment in the United States grew a lot, and there was not a reduction in the flow from the United States to Brazil. But this deep economic ties reflect and reinforce the strong political relationship between our countries. And now I'd like to share with you just a few historic aspects and that illustrate well how old and how important this relation is. The alliance between Brazil and the United States is one of the longest and the oldest in the Western Hemisphere and among the oldest in the world. The United States was the first country to recognize Brazil as an independent state in 1822. And we started immediately, we exchanged immediately diplomatic representatives in both countries. In 2004, when Baron of Rio Branco was the foreign minister of Brazil, he decided to raise to the level of embassy the Brazilian legation in Washington. And this is considered by many Brazilians and historians as the first benchmark of the unwritten alliance, which is the formula that a very important Brazilianist described the relation between our two countries in the 20th century, Bradford Burns. The relationship between Brazil and the United States was enhanced and consolidated during the 20th century. In 1910, the United States became Brazil's largest trading partner, and the following decade saw several American companies come and establish themselves in Brazil. Our partnership and alliance continued during the two big wars of the 20th century. In the First World War, Brazil opened its port to the Allied ships, had a Navy division, joined the British fleet in Gibraltar, and sent troops to fight alongside the French army, and sent to France a military hospital with 100 doctors and 200 nurses. And during the Second World War, our presence, together with all the Allied nations, was even stronger. We sent 25,000 troops to fight in Italy against the Axis nations, and we opened a naval base in Natal, in the northeast of Brazil, which allowed convoys and supply ships to cross the Atlantic, avoiding enemy submarines, and those convoys were escorted by both Brazilian naval ships and US ships. But our history is also very old and traditional in terms of visits and constant contact between high-level officials and even heads of state. And this is a proof of the strength of our bilateral relation. The first meeting between a head of state of Brazil and the US president took place in 1876. This year, the Emperor of Brazil, Pedro II, came to the United States and met with President Ulysses Grant during the Centennial International Exhibition in Philadelphia. Another interesting historic fact is that in 1906, Secretary of State Elihu Root went to Brazil in the first ever official trip of a Secretary of State abroad the country. And he went to take part in the Third International Conference of American States. The first US president to visit Brazil was President Hoover in 1929. And since then, 12 Brazilian presidents visited the United States 17 times, and 10 US presidents visited Brazil 14 times. President Obama paid a visit to Brazil in March 2011. President Dilma Rousseff came to the United States on April 9th last year, exactly 1 year. And when President Obama was elected, President Rousseff called him to congratulate on his election, and they agreed that they should meet sometime in the future, this year, or maybe beginning of next year. So we will have this list growing in the near future. The biggest strength of our political relationship is its foundation on shared values. Both Brazil and the United States are multi-ethnic and multicultural democracies. Both countries believe in multilateralism as the best way to find peaceful solutions to the world's most pressing problems. In recent years, the growth of Brazil as an important, stable, and more assertive player in the international arena has also contributed to the strengthening of our bilateral relationship. And it's only natural that we do not agree every time on every issue. But the important thing is to be able to sit down, to discuss, and to try to find build consensus and find mutually agreeable solutions for bilateral issues and also for regional and world issues that affect peace and stability in the world. Brazil is very active at the United Nations. We are founding members, and we, together with other Bretton Woods institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank, we are very present in all discussions, trying to reform those institutions and to make them more transparent and more democratic in terms of decision taking, and this is with relation to the reform of the Security Council of the United Nations and also of the Board of Directors and the share of capital in the IMF and the World Bank. And in terms of our bilateral relations, I would like just to mention that we have 38 bilateral coordination mechanisms between Brazil and the United States, which generate good channels of communication and to discuss specific items without having our difference contaminating different areas. So, and of all those 38 bilateral issues, 4 of them report to our presidents. And they're very important meetings. It's 4 of them, and the Global Partnership Dialogue, the Economic Partnership Dialogue, the Strategic Dialogue on Energy, which just took place the week before in Brazil, and the Defense Cooperation Dialogue. Well, I just would like to mention very briefly that opportunities with all this big bilateral trade and investment and political relations, opportunity for closer ties and more business with the United States are they present themselves in very big numbers. Brazil is making an effort to modernize its infrastructure, and in this way, we had recently a very important roadshow in New York to showcase the new opportunities for infrastructure investments and to invite American companies to invest in Brazil in the areas of ports, airports, highways, and railways, and also in natural gas and petroleum. And just to mention a few numbers, the Brazilian Airport Authority expects to receive investments in public-private partnerships in the order of $18 billion to modernize airports, the main airports and hubs in the country, and also to build, to construct, and to reform some 800 regional airports. These public-private partnerships have already begun in the three main airports in Brazil, which are São Paulo, Brasília, and Campinas in the great São Paulo area. And in the transportation sector, the Ministry of Finance projects investments in the order of $21 billion for railways and $45 billion for highways, which are also part of the new investments in infrastructure. And also in ports, there are projects totaling $27 billion. Of course, you know Brazil is very proud to be hosting the next World Cup, FIFA World Cup next year. This is also a good opportunity for investment. The World Cup will take place in 12 different cities, and there are projects of investing $24 billion in infrastructure, urban infrastructure projects. And this will generate, of course, indirect benefits to the regions around these cities, projected to be over $100 billion. For the Olympic Games, again, in 2016, which will take place in Rio, there are a lot of investments being already done in the city, and the projections, the official projections, show that approximately 90,000 jobs will be generated. I just would like to say a few words about Florida, Brazil and Florida. Florida is a very important state for Brazil. It is the first state as a partner, a trade partner for Brazil. 20% of our total trade with the United States is done with the state of Florida. We do have a lot of big companies established here, Brazilian companies such as Odebrecht, Votorantim in the construction area, Gerdau in the steel production sector, and we have companies in information technology, in Cutrale, in citrus and fruit juices, and so many others. And of course, not to forget, Embraer, the world's third largest aircraft manufacturer, which has in Florida only 3 plants in Melbourne, Jacksonville just opened a few days ago, and Fort Lauderdale. Of course, there are many important Florida companies in Brazil too, but what I'd like to say is that Brazil sees Florida as a great opportunity. It's a large state, a large population, and a large consumer market. Brazilians like very much coming here. I must tell you that out of the total movement of Brazilian tourists, which reached 1,800,000 in 2012, 75% of them came to Florida, which is a huge number. Brazilians, this almost 2 million Brazilian tourists in the United States spent in this country $11 billion, and it's projected that maybe half of it was spent in Florida. And out of the 5 main international destinations for Brazilian tourists in 2011 and 2012, Orlando and Miami ranked first and fourth most sought after by Brazilian tourists, together with New York, Buenos Aires, and Las Vegas. So this is also a very important source of good opportunities. I just would like to mention briefly that another area of importance for Brazil in the United States is the new program that was launched by President Rousseff when she took office. This program is in the education area. It's called Science Without Borders. And the goal is to send abroad 100,000 students during the term of President Rousseff in office, and they will concentrate in the STEMs area. And the government is paying fully, totally, the scholarships. So we would like to see half of this total number, if possible, coming to the important, prestigious universities in the United States, like the University of Miami. And I'm very glad to realize that although the goal is very ambitious, we are working very hard, and we are now starting the 3rd semester of implementation of this program. We have already in the United States over 5,000 students under only this program, and 150 in the state of Florida. So this will also generate good possibilities of bringing our countries and society together and making, of course, creating and generating opportunities for better trade and investment. And a final word on energy. Brazil, like the United States, is a rich country in terms of energy, but we do have an important cooperation in biofuels to begin with. Brazil and the United States they account for 80% of the world's production of ethanol, and we have been working together to abolish barriers between our countries for the trade of this product, and also working together in 3rd countries in the Caribbean and Central America and Africa. We have signed a memorandum of understanding to advance the cooperation of biofuels in 2007, and in 2011, when President Obama visited Brazil, we added another MOU for the partnership for the development of aviation biofuels, which is rapidly growing. I just would like to mention that Brazil, the government, decided to resume the rounds of bidding for the exploration of oil and gas in Brazil. The 11th round of biddings for the exploration of sites onshore and offshore will take place in May this year, and it will add almost 120 new sites in a total of 300 sites offered during the last few years. And this is for oil onshore and offshore, and also the first auction for sites located in the pre-salt area will take place by the end of this year, in November. The reserves of the pre-salt region, they are around, the projections are around $50 billion barrels. And of course, we are also exploiting shale gas and shale oil, which we have also large reserves. So I just would like to leave you with these remarks, which I thought it would be short, but they finally spoke too much. And I would like to renew my first words that the relation between Brazil and the United States, they are very old, they're very good, stable, mature, and that we place a lot of importance in this partnership in the future for new opportunities of business and investment, and I think this is the great perspective and the best outlook for the relations with the United States with Brazil. Thank you very much.